Hello, everybody. Detroit Lions News Podcast. This is the Green Bay Packers versus the Detroit Lions preview. And I thought I was going to do it yesterday, but unfortunately, obviously, the injury report came out today. We got the injury report. A lot of people are freaking out. We'll get to it. We got the keys of the game. Obviously, there's advantages that the Lions can still take advantage of. And there's things that the Lions offense can improve on. We'll talk about that. Obviously, the Packers defense is susceptible to big plays. We'll talk about that. And then we'll talk about the Detroit Lions defense. Obviously, the defense is decimated by injuries in the front line. But if you're new to the podcast, if you're listening on any part of uh, Facebook, but you want to view this later, we will post a link to the podcast that you can scan right here. Let me pull it up right now. Pull it up right here. You can follow the podcast anywhere you get the podcast, and it'll be a good one. So we are going to be talking about the Lions, obviously, but this is the pregame podcast. Trying to post this to the Lions Village Squad. All right, because we're doing this live, so some things don't get worked out in time. But you can follow the podcast right here, and then any time you miss a podcast when we go live, you can go view it there or listen to it wherever you get your podcast. So let's talk about the Detroit Lions versus the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers come in here, and look, Lions are a 3.5 point favorite. Obviously, the number is priced in with Detroit being at home, and if they put 2.5, people would take Green Bay potentially. I know some sharp bettors are putting money on the Lions still. That hasn't changed. It's 51.5, the over under. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Obviously, the big news of the day is that the Detroit Lions defense is decimated by injuries. When we look at the injury report, it's not beautiful. Obviously, Taylor Decker will be out. Levi Onwuzurike will be out. Josh Paschal will be out. DJ Reader will be out. We expect Kwon Alexander and Jamal Adams to play in this game. To what extent is unknown. The Lions haven't announced their roster moves as of now, but you can imagine they'll bring up Chris Smith and Jonah Williams and Pat O'Connor, who's on the active roster right now. But they're still going to have Zadarius Smith and Ali McNeil. But it'll be interesting to see what happens from there. But all in all, like, the Detroit Lions are in a position right now where they're decimated with injuries. And a lot of people are freaking out, and that's perfectly fine because there is a reason to freak out. You're missing a big portion of your team. I mean, we go back to Marcus Davenport getting injured, Hutch getting injured, John Kaminsky in the beginning of the year. Now you got Malcolm Rodriguez out, Barnes out, and Anzalone out. A lot of your front seven pieces are out. But the good thing about this, and this is the only positive that you can bring to this, is thank God you have a general manager like Brett Holmes, because he has been proactive in getting players like David Long and Kwon Alexander, and Jamal Adams has been taking snaps at linebacker, so we can assume that he's going to be playing a lot of linebacker position, because he's not really a pass coverage guy. He's not a safety. Even back in the day with the Jets, wasn't the biggest pass first guy. He was pretty much in the box safety. So putting him at linebacker is probably the right way to go. But it just goes to show you, thank God for Brad Holmes, because he's been proactive in this whole scenario. He went out and got David Long, went out and got Kwon Alexander after Rodrigo got hurt, got Jamal Adams, brought them on, and you never know. I was looking up the stats for Kwon Alexander, and his best games have came this year in a 3-game sample size with the Denver Broncos. He had a 75 overall grade in Pro Football Focus in one game. Another game, he had another one where he was, I think, at like 69, and then there was one at 73. So he's been reliable, and it's going to be interesting to see how the Detroit Lions use Kwon Alexander, how they use Jamal Adams, and how they go about it with that way. So let's look at some. This is obviously what Kwon Alexander said on coming here. He said, "I'm coming to Detroit." A lot of energy, man. Alexander said of what he remembers about Campbell and Glenn. I respect those guys a lot. I'm happy they're doing how they're doing up here. I'm proud of them. I'm ready to go to war for them. We've been through a lot together in New Orleans because Quan Alexander did play in New Orleans. So I came up here just to go out there for them and go hard for them. Jamal Adams said the same thing. On Adams coming to Detroit, it's a dream come true. Adam said this opportunity. They didn't need to call me. They didn't need me. They've been doing phenomenal. So just to get that call from a first class organization like the Detroit Lions, it's a no brainer for me. Again, I'm just grateful for the opportunity, and wherever they want me out there, wherever they call my name and call my number, I'm there. And if we go back to what Dan Campbell said after the game, after all the injuries, it was really cruel. This is the quote that you gotta get used to. It doesn't really matter. Who cares worrying about it and moaning about it and bitching about it? What does it matter? Whoever we have available, we expect them to hold the line. And that's the thing right there. Like, you understand one thing, that you're going to have injuries in the NFL. That's a for certain. You're going to have injuries in the NFL. The one thing that you have to have is a belief. That's the number one thing. We go back to the old Detroit Lions with Matt Patricia, with Jim Caldwell, with Jim Schwartz, it felt like every time they lost a starter, they were screwed. Anytime they lost a starter, they were screwed. Remember, there was games we played without Darius Slay in that 2014 year, and it just was brutal. It was totally brutal. And then Patricia, I mean, that sells itself. But what Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes have put together here is pretty special. And the reason why it's been so consistent is because they put together a good roster that can handle challenges. Obviously, Detroit's getting put to the test with as many challenges as they've had to face in the front, on the defensive line. But all in all, you love where they're at right now. You love where the Detroit Lions are at because they are 11-1, and if we look at the division standings, I mean, Green Bay's trailing by two games, but you have the tiebreaker over them, and if you win this, it's pretty much a de facto you eliminated from the NFC North contention. So it's a big game. And if we're going to be totally honest with ourselves, I think Detroit's major thing that they're going to have to do is their offense is going to have to be their defense. And what I say by that is a lot of times, back in the day when we had a great offense in Detroit, but we didn't have a great defense, we still couldn't run the ball consistently. Here in Detroit, this time around with this team, they can run the ball at will. They're going to run the ball at will, and they're going to take your lunch money. And obviously, Taylor Decker being out is going to hurt a little bit. But all in all, I think that they're going to be able to get it done. And I think that's the big thing here. I mean, we're going to talk about their red zone offense in a few, but if they can just control what they can control on the offensive side, they're going to be good to go. So let's go to the offensive side of the ball. Here's the thing about the Lions offense. They got to play good. They simply have to play good. The Detroit Lions offense has to play good this time around. If you go back and you look at some of the games before, I have a stat. This is from Al Karsten, the football guy, Al. And it's a comparison between the Lions season drive results in opponent territory and Lions week 4 through 10 when they were just buzzing. And it compares weeks 1 through 3 where they were having trouble and weeks 11 through 12 in the opponent territory. So if you look up at the top, Lions season drive results in opponent territory, 52.6, TD percentage of 52.6, scoring percentage of 77.6. Weeks 4 through 10, Detroit was had a 65.9% TD percentage, 88.6 scoring percentage. Lions weeks 1 through 3 and 11 through 12 drive results in opponent territory, 34.3 TD percentage, 62.5 scoring percentage. So you could see there that they're having issues. Like if you go back to the last game against the Chicago Bears, one of the things that they struggled with was competing in the end zone, getting it done in the end zone. When we talk about what the Detroit Lions are good at, it's you can't leave points on the field. You left it up to the Bears, and the Bears they're a talented team. They've been keeping at par with other teams. So anytime you don't convert in the red zone and you let these teams to hang around, that's where you're going to have trouble. That's where you're going to have a little bit of issues, and it's going to be important for the Detroit Lions to capitalize in the red zone. Now let's look at some let's look at the Lions rush offense versus the Packers D. Uh, you can see that in a lot of places here, the Detroit Lions have the advantage. You rushing versus the light box, Detroit second, the Green Bay Packers are 18th. Obviously, we don't have to worry about quarterback scrambles. Detroit is 32nd, Green Bay's 15th. And then you look at rushing in the red zone, Detroit's number 4, Green Bay is number 25. Detroit's offense versus design runs, Detroit's 4th, the Green Bay Packers are 12th. Running inside the tackles, Detroit's 4th, Green Bay's 12th. Playing under center, rushing under center, Detroit's 5th. The Green Bay Packers are, it looks like, 13th. So as you can see, there's a lot of areas where Detroit can exploit this Green Bay Packers team. Obviously, you look at it and you go, okay, how is the Detroit Lions offense do per quarter? This is kind of like the creme de la creme of what the Detroit Lions offense has been. So if you look at per quarter on what they've been doing, the first quarter they score 4 points per quarter in the first quarter. That's 17th in the NFL. And then you go to the second quarter, they're 14.5, which is first. They come out in the third quarter, 8.8. That's first in the NFL. Then they go into the fourth quarter, which is the money time, and they score 4.1, which a lot of times, if you kind of equate this out, there's a lot of games where they're leading by a huge margin, and so that kind of equals out. So when you see the stats, the fourth quarter is kind of like where the Detroit Lions are winning, and they're just trying to salt it away. But here's the thing. Detroit should have an advantage on the rushing end. Obviously, we showed that. But if you look at the pass, Detroit's pass versus the Green Bay Packers defense, passing versus blitz, Detroit's number 2 in the NFL. Green Bay is number 30th, so that's a huge margin right there. Detroit's short passing is number 2 in the NFL. Green Bay's short passing defense is number 16. Intermediate passing to Green Bay is 18th in that. Detroit is 5th. Passing versus no pressure, Detroit's 2nd. Green Bay is 9th. Long passing, Detroit's number 1, and Green Bay is 5th. And then you look at deep passing, Detroit's 12th, and the Green Bay Packers are 2nd. So you're going to see a lot of you're going to see a lot of over the middle kind of quick routes. I think this is what's going to benefit Detroit, in my opinion, because when you talk about the Packers linebackers, they've been brutal. You look at the Isaiah McDuffie and Quay Walker particularly struggle, each allowing 7 receptions to the nearest defender. The Packers were noticeably missing Edgerrin Cooper, who is out in this game as well in the contest, who has been targeted at the least lowest rate among Packers linebackers this season. Cooper has just allowed 6 receptions at 11 targets this season for 74 yards. Matchup, the Lions completed 9 of 10 passes for 78 yards against the Packers, with a linebacker as the nearest defender in week 9. So you look at that, there is obviously advantages for Detroit to take advantage of the Green Bay Packers. If they're able to do that, they're going to be moving the ball. That's the key part right here. You got to be able to move the ball against this Green Bay Packers team, because the Green Bay Packers, they're going to be trying to run it on you. And we'll talk about that with the defense, but all in all, you got to keep them at bay. And the passing game right here for Detroit, it's way better than you can imagine. And then you got the passing versus blitz. Obviously, Detroit's 2nd. Green Bay is 30th. Detroit's 2nd in short passing. Green Bay is 16th. Rushing versus the light box. Quarterback. Well, that's a little bit. That's a pass. Wait, we got that wrong. And then you look at same thing. But you look at key advantages right here. There's literally Detroit has the offensive advantage. If you look at the offensive versus defensive advantage, Detroit's overall passing efficiency is 2nd. Green Bay is 8th. Their rushing efficiency on defense is 13th. Detroit's is 5th. Pressure rate, Detroit's is 18th. The Green Bay Packers is 25th. And then you look at the only thing that is really benefiting the Green Bay Packers is the pressure rate on their offense. Our passing efficiency, Detroit's number 2. Current, and then the rushing is basically tied. So that'll be interesting. But you look at that, and there's a lot of reasons for Detroit to be able to move the ball. I think a lot of people are expecting Detroit's got to play better offensively. Obviously, the last couple games, I feel like they left a lot of points on the board. If you go back and look, the Indianapolis game, felt they left points on the board. Chicago, obviously, they left points on the board. They got to the red zone a couple times and they kicked the field goal, turned over the ball, but that's going to happen, and it just can't happen today. I mean, tomorrow, because you'll begin this podcast tomorrow, today, whatever. Anyways, they just can't have it happen tomorrow because we're recording this podcast on a Wednesday. So I have to always keep it in comparison with the people that are going to be listening to the podcast. But you just can't let them control you. I think that's the major thing. Like if you look at the Packers in their defense, they struggle against the pass. Obviously, Edgerrin Cooper being out for the Packers is going to be huge because Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie, they have shown to be a liability in coverage. If you can get Sam Laporta or Jahmyr Gibbs or Dave Montgomery on them, hope to God you get Amon-Ra St. Brown on them. Then it could be a huge thing. But it'll be interesting to see what happens on that side of the equation because I think Detroit has the advantage there, and we'll see what happens from there. So you've seen that obviously the pass offense has been an issue. And then if you look at the red zone offense versus their red zone defense, Detroit is 6th. The Packers are 20th. So this is a chance for you to take advantage of the Packers' red zone defense. This is a major portion of the game. I feel like the Lions have struggled at points with converting in the red zone, which has led them to be in a lot of games that they should have blown out, especially last week. Last week was kind of a dud. When we talk about last week for the Detroit Lions, they were in the red zone. Like I said, they were in the red zone a couple times. Interception. They had a go for field goals. And the way this game could potentially work out is you are going to have to play good offense. You're going to have to score some touchdowns. And I expect Detroit from, week 4 when they played Seattle and compared to like last week, they looked like it was the Buccaneers game all over again. Like the Lions really beat themselves. And every time the Lions could play a close game, like Houston, they beat themselves. Even though they won the game, they were beating themselves with the turnovers and everything like that. Buccaneers, they couldn't convert in the red zone, beat themselves. The Rams game, same thing. Chicago couldn't convert in the red zone. Those are things that are going to haunt you. But this team is so good, and they're able to get away from it that at some point, it's not going to cost you as much as, But tomorrow, it could be a lot different. Obviously, Josh Jacobs is having a great year for the Green Bay Packers. And I was very intrigued by what I seen from last time. So last time, Gibbs and Montgomery only had 124 yards rushing. I expect them to have a lot more this time around. Obviously, when you talk about Gibbs and Montgomery, they did a damn good job. But I expect them to be a way better this time around. Josh Jacobs outgained him last time, so that's going to be very interesting. Hopefully, Detroit can kind of put it together and run the ball because they're going to be at home. It's a chance for them to, run on even ground. They know what kind of ground they're on, so it's not like that rain-soaked Lambeau Field. So that's good for Detroit. But Green Bay is going to come in here and they're going to try to stop the run. And I believe I was reading or I listened to a little snippet of a podcast from Glover Quinn, and he had Ahmad Green on. Ahmad Green, Ahmad Green, the old Packers running back. And he said that the Green Bay Packers have to stop Jahmyr Gibbs and Dave Montgomery if they want any chance of winning. And I agree, because if this team gets their rush game going, they're going to score some points, and it's going to be up to Jordan Love to score some points too. I could see, if I'm going to be completely honest with you, I could see a very, very high scoring game tomorrow. I could see a very high scoring game against the Green Bay Packers because this has all the makings. Now, Romeo Doubs is out for the Green Bay Packers, so that is an interesting development for the Green Bay Packers. But all in all, it's a very easy kind of transition because I think that the Packers offense does permit some challenges, but I think that because their inconsistency at quarterback, I think that they can be had. So we'll see what happens. But the Lions offense has to carry the day, and that's the most important thing for the Detroit Lions is if the offense does what they're supposed to, unlike last week and unlike the game against Indianapolis, they're going to win the football game. If they don't play the way they've been playing in prior weeks, they're not. And if we go back to that tweet from football guy L, you could just see it right here. Weeks 1 through 3, 11 and 12. Look at that TD percentage. It's down considerably from their season average. And from weeks 4 to 10, it's down significantly. So you look at those things and you look at the scoring percentage, you look at the touchdown percentage. The Lions have to do a lot better on offense if they want to win this football game. Period. End of story. And that's a very good tweet by Al. He does a very good. He has some really good stats out there. It's like me and him are brothers because we always I come up with stats too. But it's just interesting to think about it. If the Detroit Lions can keep it to the game that they want to play, I think they'll be fine. If they play the way Green Bay wants to play, they're going to lose because we'll get to it on defense right now. As we transition to the defensive portion, the defense has to play good. Obviously, we know the defense is injured. Obviously, we know the defense has some major foibles right now. Obviously, if you're Green Bay Packers and you're thinking about how you're going to scheme for the Detroit defense, you're going to run the hell out of it. Now, it's a good thing that Brad Holmes did the due diligence. He got Jamal Adams in here. He got Quan Alexander in here. He got David Long in here. Those are major pieces that can help you in the run game. If what Detroit has been able to do, especially when Hutch was out for those 2 weeks, they got a lot of pressure, so they just didn't get sacks. So Darius Smith is going to be here. We'll see what happens there. They're going to have a little bit of a mix in the middle. Obviously, with DJ Reader out, that's going to hurt a little bit. But this is another guy who could step up. We've talked about it before. Broderick Martin, he has not been a guy who's been on the field lately. Tomorrow is his time to shine. Tomorrow is a chance for him to prove Brad Holmes right, because a lot of people, myself included, have called that pick a disaster of a pick so far because he has not been able to play. And I thought we'd seen more of him. Obviously, coming off the IR, we thought we'd see more of him, but we just haven't seen as much as we wanted. So it's going to be interesting to see how the snap count tomorrow and how much they play Broderick Martin and how good he is. If Broderick, here's the plus side. If Broderick becomes a guy who you could insert in the defensive tackle rotation, very good for the Detroit Lions. That's very good for the Detroit Lions. If he is a total disaster, that could be an issue. But all in all, like Detroit's defense, if we go to the man, I don't know where the hell is it. Lions pass defense versus the Packers pass offense. They're passing versus the blitz. Green Bay is 31st. So if I'm Aaron Glenn, I'm gonna package up some blitzes and I'm gonna throw it their way. Intermediate passing, Detroit's number 1 in the league. Green Bay is number 20. Quick passing, Detroit is number 3. Green Bay is number 27. Passing versus no pressure, Detroit is number 2. Green Bay is number 13. Passing versus no blitz, Green Bay is number 1. So, look right there. You gotta blitz this kid. He struggles with the blitz. He's gonna have trouble with the blitz, and you're gonna just have to blitz all day long because you have to stop the run. If you could stop the run, you could blitz, you could stop it. You could hold them at bay, and that'll be interesting to see how that goes out. But quick overall passing efficiency, Detroit is number 2. Green Bay is number 7. Short passing, Detroit's 6th. The Green Bay Packers are 17th. Passing versus no play action, Detroit's 5th. Passing first play action, Detroit's 1st. Deep passing, Detroit's 1st. So you look at the rush offense for the Green Bay Packers. Obviously, they have their whatever reason, even with DJ Reader in the lineup, they were 25th in the NFL in stopping the run inside the tackle. So they were still going to be able to run the ball. That's my opinion. Obviously, DJ Reader is a huge help, but Detroit's been 25th in rushing inside the tackles all year long. So what really changes here? Rushing outside the tackles, Detroit's number 4 versus the Packers are number 10th at 10. Rushing versus light box, Detroit is 17th versus the Packers, who are 7th. Rushing in the red zone, Detroit's 17th. The Packers are 25th. Rushing versus stack box, Detroit's 8th. And the Packers are 16th. Rushing under center, Packers are 8th. The Detroit Lions are number 5 in defense. And quarterback scrambles, Detroit's 11, and the Packers are number 13. So right then and there, you start to see some little foibles in the argument that, obviously you're going to be missing DJ Reader, you're going to miss Pascal, you're going to miss Mekhi Wingo and Levi Onwuzurike, but they haven't been able to stop the run in the inside of the tackles all year long. It's just about getting pressure. And I think what you're going to see here is, obviously we brought it up with the Packers pass offense. They really struggle against the blitz. They're one of the worst teams against the blitz. So what you're going to do is you are going to focus your sole identity on trying to blitz Jordan Love, because he does not like to be blitzed. Jordan Love doesn't want to be blitzed at all. He's had trouble with the pass while blitzing. If you look at his numbers, I think half of his interceptions are off a blitz. So if you go look at those numbers and you go see his completion percentage, if I'm Aaron Glenn, I'm blitzing all day long. I don't care if this kid beats me deep. I don't care, because he's going to throw an interception. The stats just trended out. When you don't blitz him, that's when he's at his peak. When you don't blitz Jordan Love, he loves that. He can sit in the pocket, scan the field. He looks deep a lot of times when he's not getting blitz, and he delivers some good strikes. That's one of the things. When I watched the Chicago Bears shut down Jordan Love, I thought it was the most interesting comparison to what you see now. Because what the Green Bay Packers were trying to do is they were trying to hit the Chicago Bears deep, and the Chicago Bears didn't let them do it. Which Eberflus is an idiot, but to be honest, if you go back to that game, you watch the offense. Just watch the Packers offense. They struggled in certain portions trying to keep it on the rails. You've seen the Packers offense really struggle when they got blitzed. And as soon as the second half came around, that's when the Bears started blitzing more. And they just started, it was like shit on a tin horn, like Nick Saban says. They were just coming at him, man. They were just throwing blitzes right at Jordan Love, and there was a couple plays where he could have been picked off. There was a couple plays where he threw it, and there was one play where he threw it as an intentional grounding. So if I'm Aaron Glenn, if we go back to when he was being successful over those weeks without Hutch and without Za'Darius, it was because of him blitzing. And if you go back to that game, one of the major things that really turned that game around was Jordan Love got blitzed on the end. And what Jordan Love did is he panicked. He didn't see Kirby Joseph, and he threw some gopher ball up there. When you blitz Jordan Love, that is what he will do. If you let him be out in the back there and just scan in the field, he's scanning the field like he's just ready to chuck it deep, you're going to lose this game. I don't think Aaron Glenn's going to do that. Because if you go back over what Jordan Love is good at, Jordan Love would love to scan the field and have a clean pocket. That's what Jordan Love likes. He does not like getting blitzed. So that's an interesting portion right there. All right, let's move on to this. Tomorrow's referee will be, tomorrow's referee will be John Hussey. He'll be the referee for Thursday night Packers-Lions game. Very unusual for a crew to flip from Monday Night Football to Thursday Night Football. But what you got to know is his crew throws 4.4 flags on the home team, and like 6.5 on the defense. So that will be interesting to see what happens there. Obviously, you're hoping that you create that stadium creates enough noise where they're making Green Bay just jump off sides historically. Obviously another thing that's going to come on, and this is what I'll tell you what, man, I don't know why people try to do it, but they do. Xavier McKinney has been talking again. Last time you might have heard him say that, something about the Detroit Lions. This time he says, we ain't worried about him. Xavier McKinney on St. Brown wearing Green Bay Sucks hoodie. There is not one person on earth, not one, that I want to piss off more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. It just seems like a bad idea. I think everyone that has a fiance or a wife or a husband or whatever. I think the one thing you really want to avoid is not pissing them off. I feel like Amon-Ra St. Brown is in the same category as those people. Like if you do something that's gonna piss them off, you're never gonna hear the end of it. This guy has a list of all the people that were drafted ahead of him. It's insane. But you can expect the best out of Amon-Ra St. Brown tomorrow. So let's get to the X factors. Obviously, we talk about what's going to happen tomorrow. I think the X factors are going to be for the Detroit Lions offense. For the Detroit Lions offense, I think the X factor is going to be Jared Goff. If Jared Goff can complete the short passes, if he can just keep this offense humming, and when they get in the red zone, they capitalize, unlike they have been for the last couple games. I don't feel like they've been good in the red zone. If they could do that, they'll be fine. If they can't do that, then they're going to be in trouble because I feel like this game tomorrow is going to be an offensive shootout. I think both teams are going to have both defenses can be exploited. I feel like Green Bay has a more exploitable defense, to be honest. Jaire Alexander is out, Corey Ballentine is out, and Edgerrin Cooper is out, and Romeo Doubs is out for them too. But I look at them missing Cooper. That's a huge loss, in my opinion. So those are two things that can offset. But I look at Detroit and I go, if Jared Goff can convert in the red zone, if Jared Goff can convert some small passes, keep the clock moving, they win time of possession, I think they're going to be good. Obviously, missing Taylor Decker isn't ideal. Obviously, you'd love to have Taylor Decker, but obviously there's a bigger fish to fry moving forward. So that's going to be an interesting thing right there. But it'll be interesting to see what the Lions offense does. But outside of Goff, I would say two players that potentially could be X factors is Sam Laporta. I think him against those linebackers could be crucial. And Jahmyr Gibbs. I think if they're put on the linebackers in the pass game, I think Detroit could really exploit them. We'll go back to it. The Packers have the Lions have completed 9 of their 10 passes against the Packers with the linebacker as the nearest defender week 9. So don't think that Detroit didn't go back on that and say, okay, well, that's what we could do. You look at they're missing Edgerrin Cooper in the contest, who has been targeted at the lowest rate. So obviously Edgerrin Cooper being out and Quay Walker and Isaiah McDuffie, they're not good in pass coverage. They have never been good in pass coverage. And they're going against guys who can easily exploit them. We'll see what happens there, but it'll be interesting to see what the Detroit Lions do. And then we look at the Lions X factors on defense. I think X factor wise, I think if you're going to be completely honest with yourself, I think this is a game where Brian Branch really settles himself. I think this is a revenge game. He was kicked out of the last game because of a unnecessary hit that was total BS. But he's going to be in this game. What does the impact of Brian Branch do? What does the impact of Brian Branch do? I think Brian Branch is an all-pro player. I think he has the ability to twist and turn games. And if he's able to do that, they're going to win this game. I think that Detroit has a better shot than most people are saying. I think if you listen to 97 Won the Ticket or you listen to some of those people, you think the sky is falling. And I think there's some beat writers who say the same thing. But when you look inside the numbers, Detroit can beat Green Bay. Obviously, you look at the people that are missing on the defensive side of the ball, and you're saying, I don't know. I just don't know. And if you look at it pragmatically, you look at it numbers-wise, Detroit can still beat Green Bay. There's things that Detroit does well that Green Bay does not do well. And what Detroit has to do tomorrow, which is blitz, Green Bay isn't good against that. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see what the Detroit Lions do. Obviously, we will talk about that on our pregame podcast tomorrow. We'll be doing that from 5 till 6 at Three Kings Sports Cards and Collectibles. We will also be doing a watch party there. So if you're going down, if you can't go to the game, come to Three Kings Sports Cards and Collectibles. We'll have some fun and we'll talk some football and everything like that. So we'll see you guys in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. Please subscribe to the YouTube JC Sports. But if you are still watching, which there are 23 people that are still watching, you can follow the podcast by hitting the QR code right on the screen, and you can go right to the podcast. If you miss any portion of the podcast, you can go there. We will see you in the next podcast. We talk more Detroit Lions football here on the Detroit Lions News Podcast. Thank you for listening, and have a good night.